Hey guys, welcome back to Andy Narrates and thank you for joining us for another story. Today's story's title goes like this. Mother-in-law-to-be demands that I replace my half-sister as maid of honor and let my future sister-in-law take her place because family comes first. So I tell my husband all about it, and now they're mad because neither of them are invited to the wedding. I'm 24 female, I'm getting married to my high school sweetheart Craig, 24 male in 4 weeks. My maid of honor is my younger sister Nora, 18 female. Technically, she's my half-sister, but we grew together. So I think of her as my sister and that's it. My parents got separated when I was just a year old, and my dad decided not to be a part of my life anymore. They'd never been married anyway, so they didn't need a divorce, and my mother's family is rich, so she didn't require child support. So they didn't keep in touch either. When I was around 3 years old, my mom met my dad. He's my stepdad, but I refer to him as dad since he's the only father that I've known. And they got married about a year later. Then Nora was born, and our family was complete. They're my real family, and I treat them as such. We don't care about the biology of it, but for whatever reason, my mother-in-law Kendra, 42 female, seems to care a lot about the technicality of these things. Kendra has known me ever since I was in high school because I started dating Craig when I was in my junior year, and we've been together ever since. Even back then, I used to get this feeling that she didn't particularly like me for no real reason. She would just be really weird whenever I would come over, but Craig would tell me not to mind her behavior because she was just awkward about the idea of her teen son already dating and being so serious about me. So that's what I chalked it up to and tried not to mind her strange behavior around me. It wasn't even as though she was rude to me. She was just kind of a little too formal around me, and that never really changed. Even after we'd been together for almost 3 years, I still felt like she saw me as some kid from his high school and nothing else. To be honest, I would say that she treated his friends differently and seemed to be very comfortable around them. She treated them like a part of the family, but not me, which made me feel kinda weird. But I tried not to let it get to me and made myself believe that this was no big deal. I never spoke to Craig about it because I didn't want to make a whole thing out of it. But then we got engaged a few months back, and even then, her behavior didn't change and she continued to act like I wasn't part of the family. And it really felt like I never would be because she wasn't ready to accept me and just constantly treated me like an acquaintance. After we got engaged, it started bothering me even more, and I finally spoke to Craig about it. And he told me that he had noticed this, but hadn't brought it up because he didn't want to make me feel insecure. However, after our conversation about it, he told me that he would speak to Kendra and try to get to the bottom of this, because now that we were getting married, he wanted everything to be perfect, since whether or not she liked it, I was a part of the family now. He did talk to her a couple of months ago, and the three of us had a heart-to-heart discussion about it, but it turned out to be pretty pointless, because Kendra just denied everything and told me that it was all in my head. And that she obviously accepted me as part of the family. There was no much that we could say after that, so we dropped it and didn't bring it up again. We wanted things to go smoothly before the wedding and didn't want to stir up any unwanted trouble, so we left at that, and I tried not to let myself get too bothered over this. Even if she didn't like me and didn't want to accept me, I was still going to get married, so it was pretty inconsequential and I didn't have to worry about it. That's what I told myself. She continued to behave in the same way and treated everybody differently and more warmly as compared to me, but now I just didn't care. I also began to treat her the same way and wouldn't make any effort to make her like me anymore, since there was just no point. Craig loved me and everybody else liked me, so that's all that I needed. Now, coming over to what happened a few days ago. We were all at his parents' house for dinner, and after dinner, Kendra asked me if she could speak to me in private. Craig and I were kind of surprised because this was the first time that she had ever tried to talk to me in person, but I said yes, and she took me aside to another room. I could tell that this was going to be a serious conversation, but I was not prepared for what she was going to say. As soon as we were seated, she told me that she wanted to talk about the maid of honor position at my wedding. That took me by surprise because I didn't think that it was something that she cared about, but then she went on to tell me that she wanted me to tell Nora to step down so that my sister-in-law, Elisa, 22 female, could take her place. Elisa was Craig's younger sister and she seemed to like me. We got along well, but we were not the best of friends, so I didn't see any reason to make her my maid of honor over my own sister. I told Kendra that I didn't think it was necessary, and besides, I didn't even think that Elisa cared about being a part of the wedding. So far, she had been pretty chill about everything and hadn't tried to talk to me about it. But then Kendra told me that this was a day to celebrate the union of two families, not just a couple, and we had to take that into consideration. So that's why she didn't think that Nora was good fit for the maid of honor position. I didn't understand what she was getting at until she spelled it out for me and told me that Nora was just my half-sister, which is why she didn't think that it was appropriate for her to be maid of honor, since she wasn't exactly my quote-unquote family. Elisa was going to be my family, and even though she wasn't showing it, she desperately wanted to be a part of the wedding and had spoken about that with Kendra, which is why she had taken it upon herself to convince me to make her the maid of honor, because apparently, family comes first. I didn't take that conversation well and snapped at her. I told her that for me, Nora was my family, and I didn't care if she believed it was appropriate or not. It was very insulting for her to imply that Nora wasn't family enough for me, since we didn't share the same father, and I didn't like that one bit. I had put up with enough over the years, but this was something that I couldn't tolerate because she had no right to speak about my family. Going by her logic, family does come first, and even though Nora wasn't related to me fully, Elisa wasn't related to me at all. So I had no reason to make her the maid of honor, and whatever reasons Kendra had were all just rubbish. I argued with her, but she wasn't ready to listen to me, and said that the bottom line was that Nora wasn't my real sister, but Elisa was completely and fully related to Craig. And if I wanted to make somebody my maid of honor, then it should be her, because now this is my new family, and I need to accept that. That entire argument was so stupid and ridiculous that after going back and forth for a couple of minutes, I decided to get up and walk out of the house without even saying goodbye. Craig followed after me, and once we were in the car, I told him everything. He apologized to me on his family's behalf and told me that he would speak to his mom and make her apologize to me. They had a conversation about it the next day, but it only ended with more yelling and fighting because Kendra refused to back off and doubled down on what she said about Nora not being my real sister. It was incredibly hurtful, and I didn't appreciate her saying it over and over again. All my life, these were the only people who had been my family, and I wasn't going to let it slide because she was insulting them, and I wasn't okay with it. So I spoke to Craig and told him that I'd had enough, and now I didn't want Kendra to be present at our wedding anymore. And surprisingly, he agreed with it. I didn't think that he would, because he's pretty close to his family, as I am, but he said that this time she had taken things too far, and it was unacceptable for her to be speaking this way about my family. Because if she was insulting me, then that meant that she was insulting him as well, because now that we are about to get married, we are a package deal now. It was a sweet sentiment, and I really appreciated it. Besides, he wouldn't be able to take it if somebody said these things about his family, so it was unfair of him to expect that I would be okay with Kendra insulting my family. Right after that conversation, he sent his mother an email saying that she was no longer invited to the wedding unless she apologized to me. We didn't expect her to apologize, but we didn't expect her to go get Elisa to do her dirty work and text us instead either, especially since we had a pretty good relationship with Elisa. But she texted us and said that our behavior was extremely disgraceful and that we needed to grow the heck up. She addressed the text to Craig, but of course, I was reading it as well. I could tell that even though the text had been sent by her, it was Kendra doing the talking. She repeated all the same things that Kendra had said to me the other day and said that it was unfair of us to disinvite her from the wedding just because she had the guts to speak the truth and wasn't sugarcoating it for me. She told Craig that we were being emotional fools and that we needed to think with our brains for once. Elisa being a part of the wedding was apparently far more appropriate and reasonable than Nora, and that was their final opinion. I couldn't believe the audacity to still stick to what they were saying. So Craig and I decided that we were going to disinvite her from the wedding as well, because this was no place for hatefulness. This was a day that was supposed to celebrate us, and if they didn't agree with that, then they could just not attend. So we texted back and told her that she wasn't welcome to the wedding either now, and thus began the melodrama. We didn't block them, but they stopped texting us and made my father-in-law Glenn text us instead. So far he hadn't said anything about this, but now that everybody was getting involved, I guess Kendra pushed him to talk to us, and so he did. He told us that if his wife and his daughter were not going to be attending, then he wasn't coming to the wedding either, and that really got at Craig. He was already upset enough about Kendra and Elisa not being there at the wedding, but he was really close to Glenn, and his saying that he wouldn't attend the wedding is what really got to him. He's been upset for a while now, and I don't know what to do to make him feel better. The only thing that I can think of right now is talking to his family and sorting things out with them, but at this stage, it's going to be really difficult for me to approach them and talk to them because the things that they said about my family were just not cool. I feel horrible because if I just reached common ground with Kendra instead of fighting with her and maybe made Elisa a bridesmaid or something, then we wouldn't be in this position right now. I feel like this is my fault. Craig has told me several times that it isn't, and he will get over it, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. And I feel terrible about this. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister-in-law be my maid of honor? Hi, so Craig and I sat down yesterday and had a real discussion about this. One where he wasn't shutting down emotionally as soon as I brought it up and told me that he would be fine eventually, and I guess we got somewhere. I told him that we needed to talk about this because he couldn't just keep on running away from this conversation forever since the wedding was just in a couple of weeks. He resisted at first and said that he really didn't want to talk about it, but I sat him down and made him because he needed to confront his feelings. So we had a conversation and he finally told me that he was upset about whatever was going on with his family, but he knew that they were in the wrong here. He said that he wasn't going to beg them to attend or try to clear the air with them unless they apologized first. And if that meant that they wouldn't be attending his wedding, then it just meant that he wasn't as important to them as he had believed he was, and that's what was bumming him out. I felt bad for him, but I agree with whatever he was saying. If his family couldn't even put their ego aside for the sake of his wedding, then I didn't know what to say. If the family does come first, as Kendra had said, then she really should apologize and at least try to make things right. She's too proud and arrogant to do it, and Elisa was obviously going to stand with her mother. The same goes for Glenn, who is going to stand with his wife. It just sucks for Craig, because this is his family, and yet they don't want to stand by him. Even though Kendra is the one who screwed up and was incredibly disrespectful to me. I don't understand why they would do such a thing, because I thought that they liked me. But I guess they like Kendra more, or maybe they're just afraid of her. There's something off about this, and that's for sure. I spoke to my family about it, and they agreed with me and said that there was something really weird about the way that his family was behaving. But thankfully, my family is being really helpful, and they have even offered to come meet Craig to make him feel better, because at least my family treats him like one of us. They have never made him feel alienated or treated him like a stranger. They love him like their own kid, which is a lot more than I can say about his mom and the way that she acts with me. I really think that spending time with them is going to do him a lot of good. So I invited them for dinner tonight, and it's going to be a surprise for him. I just hope that it goes well and helps him take his mind off his own family. So it's really late right now, but the dinner was a huge success. After a long time, I saw Craig smile and have fun, and it made me happy to see him that way. That's how I always want to see him, happy and in his element. After my family left, he thanked me for inviting them and surprising him. He told me that this was exactly what he needed. A reminder that he was actually loved by a lot of other people and that love was unconditional. unlike his family, who only loved him as long as he agreed with whatever they were saying. But the second that he had his differences with them, he was suddenly the bad guy and not a part of the family anymore, even if he was standing up for what was right. He felt considerably better after dinner with my family and told me that for a while, he just stopped thinking about his own parents. He said that looking at our family, he realized that this is what it should look like. Everybody just loves each other and there are no conditions, that we have to act a certain way or do everything right. We're just always there for each other. His mother is not the same way, and growing up, he and Elisa knew that if they didn't do exactly what their mom wanted them to do, then they would instantly be branded as bad kids, and she would actually hold back showing affection to them to make them feel guilty and manipulate them into behaving in a certain way. And that messed up with his head as a kid, which then lasted into adulthood, and he found himself still doing things that his mother wanted him to do, just so she would approve of him and his decisions, and he regretted it all now, because now he realized that his mother ran the whole show. All his life he was made to dance to her tunes, and if he refused, then he was just a bad person. But now that he was finally standing up for himself, his mother felt like she had lost control and was losing him to me, which is why she was acting this way. His dad and sister were too brainwashed to realize what was happening, and that is why they were going along with it. He was just frustrated that this is how things had been working, but he just never seemed to realize it. I hadn't heard him talk about these things earlier. This is all brand new information for me, and I guess it was new for him as well. It was actually kind of scary, the kind of hold that Kendra had on her family, but also impressive at the same time. I was just thankful that Craig wasn't part of it anymore and had been disillusioned. There is just a week to go before the wedding, and Craig and I pretty much put everything else out of our heads as we had a lot of preparation before the wedding that we needed to catch up on. We were about to go meet with our caterer one final time today, but to our surprise, Glenn showed up at our house today unannounced. We hadn't spoken since he told us that he wouldn't be attending the wedding if his wife and daughter were not going to be there, so it was quite a surprise to see him. We invited him in, and we could tell that he was building up to something when he started acting really nervous and jittery during the time that we were trying to make small talk with him. He finally came clean to us and told us that it was Kendra who had forced him to send us a text, and he didn't actually agree with anything that she was saying. He had finally mustered up the courage to come to talk to us and tell us that he was on our side. He was afraid that this would mean that he would have to fight against Kendra, but he wanted Craig to know that he was ready to fight against whoever it took and that he was with him. It was pretty sweet to watch father and son reunite, and it was emotional as hell. I might have even shed a tear or two. Apparently, Kendra had been threatening him with divorce if he let this marriage happen, and she believed that if they held out for long enough, then Craig would cancel this wedding. Elisa didn't want to be a part of this either, but her mother was forcing her to, and she had no choice since she was still living with her parents. That house belongs to Kendra, so if she wanted a place to live, then she would have to agree with whatever she said. Basically, Kendra was using the house as leverage and had everybody under her thumb because she didn't approve of me and she wanted the wedding to get cancelled. She figured that if nobody from Craig's family attended, then he would get the hint and leave me. And the reason that she didn't like me was unsurprisingly because of my family. Glenn told me that she had never liked me because she believed that my mother was a woman of loose morals, because she'd move on within a year of her breakup with my bio father and got married to my dad, and she thought that she had raised me to be the same way, so she didn't like me and didn't approve of me as a wife to her son. Her biggest problem was that we were not even a real family in her opinion, but we refused to acknowledge it and pretended like we were, which was apparently quote-unquote faking it. It blew my mind how petty it was of her to hold something like that against me. Moreover, it wasn't even as though my mother found it easy to move on from my biological father, but he was the one who didn't want anything to do with us. So what was she supposed to do? Just give up on her life and sit around waiting for him forever? It wasn't even like she moved on immediately. She waited 3 years. I think that's enough. And Kendra shouldn't be judging anybody, because she isn't exactly the best judge of character. She believed that she herself was a righteous and great human being, but that turned out to be a complete and total lie. so I wouldn't trust her judgment. After we spoke to Glenn, he told us that he was going to be at the wedding and would try to make Elisa apologize to us as well and come back to normalcy. He said that he had moved out of that house and was living in a hotel right now, but as soon as the divorce proceedings began, he would start looking for a new place to live in. The only reason he had been living with Kendra so far was because he was afraid of leaving her. But he could totally afford to, and he wasn't even that old. So there was no reason for him to act like this was the end of the line for him, and I was glad that Glenn was finally stepping out. He deserved this. In fact, everybody in that family deserves to be happy, and I wish that they could have come to that conclusion sooner. It would have saved them a lot of heartache, I assume. At least for Craig and I, if we had just cut Kendra off sooner, we would have been a lot happier. But it's better late than never. I just hope Elisa joins us and doesn't continue living in her mother's shadow anymore. She deserves better than whatever she's putting herself through. Hey folks, so we got married about a week ago and it was just fantastic. We had been preparing for this day for months, and it finally happened, and it went exactly the way that we wanted it to. We really and truly are blessed to have so many people who love us and made that day as perfect as it was. I couldn't be more thankful for everything. My family was there, and so was his, with the exception of Kendra, of course. Elisa did apologize to us, and she has also moved out and is living with a friend right now. So I guess all's well that ends well. Everybody seems a lot happier now since they don't have to constantly mind themselves and think about what Kendra would say. It's a judgment-free zone now, and the only person suffering is Kendra, which is sad, but she brought this onto herself, so I don't feel too bad for her. She'll get over it. Alright guys, that was a wrap up for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we will be seeing you in the next one.